Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, it's disappointing. You know, you get questions from your family, you get questions from your friends. You know, what happened? You know, do you know what happened? That kind of thing. So, but you know, the other part of it you have to keep in mind is this is test, evaluation, development, and it's part of the process. You know, I think this became public because there was a video that got online, right? And this happens a lot. I guarantee you it happens a lot. It'll happen next week maybe to somebody doing an airplane test or maybe a space vehicle test. These things happen. And while it's disappointing, it also can be a real gift to the final design because it can inform the final design. You find the problems that Elon talked about and you go, okay, we need to fix this, we need to redesign it. And the team mobilized incredibly, both on the NASA side and the SpaceX side, to come up with the, why did this happen? What can we do to fix it? How can we rebuild the capsule and make it safer for crews in the future? And that's exactly what they've done. And now we're kind of at the end stages, as Jim put it, of verifying and understanding that we do have the margins, that the redesign with the burst disk works, and it works the way we intend it to work.
So Doug and I had just been down at Kennedy a couple days prior to the actual event, and so my first thought was to that team, because you know we feel so integrated with that team that their failure is not their failure; it's our failure as a team as we kind of go forward. So my thoughts went out to Kiko and the rest of the guys down there in Florida who had been showing us the hardware that they were proud of and telling us how excited they were to pull off the next phase of the campaign of tests that eventually lead to Doug and I flying the first mission for SpaceX on the Demo 2 vehicle. And so I thought of that team. I sent them a text, and then we got down there as soon as we could. Once we were out of the way from a cleanup perspective, it wasn't the best area to send folks in that weren't in the right, protective equipment, and that's not our skill set. We don't, when there's an issue like that, we keep our distance from it and let the professionals handle it. And so that's where I was that day when it happened. We got an immediate message from the team here. I think Lee Rosen shared that there had been an incident and kept us informed, and that was another key aspect of any of these failures as they go forward. Giving us insight and sharing that understanding as we go forward has been a part of what makes me so comfortable with this team kind of going forward. And I just really appreciate how much insight we've been able to have and how quickly we've been able to have it in each of these cases when something like this has come up.
I think it's important to emphasize, because I think a lot of the public just isn't aware of just like what happens with testing. Honestly, if there's a test program and nothing happens to that test program, I would say that test program is insufficiently rigorous. That's the reality. And it's important to remember that that same spacecraft went to the space station, docked, and returned. And if people had been on board that craft, they would have returned safely. So when you test, you're testing extreme conditions, you're testing off-nominal conditions, and you're trying to find extreme corner cases of where things go wrong. And to be totally frank, if there hasn't been some hardware that blew up on the test stand, I don't think you tested it hard enough. That's the reality. So, you've got to push the envelope, find out where the outer issues are, and then address all the corner cases.
I will tell you, one of the things that SpaceX is really good at doing, in fact, you could say maybe the best, is fly, test, fix, fly, test, fix, fly, test, fix. It's a very different approach than a lot of our other contractors. And it is a way to iteratively make development changes very fast, and in fact to fail fast. Fail fast and then fix. And some people see concerns in that. I will tell you that I think it's different than a lot of our other contractors, but I don't think it's worse. I don't think it's better. It's different, and it's unlike, quite frankly, what our other contractors do. And I like it. I like it being a part of the mix of our contract capability. That there is this iterative fly, test, fix mindset that SpaceX has, which is very different than trying to qualify every subcomponent and every component and every craft before it ever, hits a test stand. SpaceX is very good at moving quickly, and that's good for NASA. It pushes us. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a fundamental principle of make sure you fail on the test stand so you do not fail in flight.
Hello, my name's Tim Fernholtz. I'm a reporter with Quartz. Question for you, Administrator Bridenstine. We have most of the commercial crew team here, but we still have an open seat for an Associate Administrator of Human Operations. I'm curious if you can update us on that search, who you're talking to, and when you think you'll have someone for that role. Will we need to wait for someone to be in that role for a little while before we can go ahead with, say, a Demo 2 mission?
So to start off, Ken Bowersox, who's an astronaut who, of course, has flown with our gentleman here. He's an amazing individual. He is in the acting position, and he's doing great work. As of right now, I'm very confident that we can continue moving forward and not have any delays because of the opening in that position, because of the quality person and the quality engineer that Ken Bowersox is. I would also say that we are looking for all of the best talent that we could find to fill that role. And we will come to a point where we settle on a name, and we're not there yet. We opened the aperture very wide initially. We have started narrowing it down, but we are not ready to announce who that person is. But I will tell you that announcement is not months away, it's weeks away. And that's a day that we're all looking forward to.
Hi, Rod Pyle with Space.com. Just wondering if you could give us a little bit more of an update on specific milestones for the parachute tests.
Yeah, so I mean, here's the thing that we have to have with parachutes, because it's not easy to model. What we have to have is we have to have consistent, repeatable performance. We need a lot of drop tests. And of course, because of the conversations that we've had over the last weeks, we now know that we are committed as a team, SpaceX and NASA, committed as a team to the Mark III parachute, which is superior to the Mark II, although the Mark II, we could argue, is safe. The Mark III is even safer. And we need to get, with the Mark III now, consistent, repeatable performance. I will also say that given where we are and the resources that are being deployed on that particular effort, we talked even today that we could see as many as 10 drop tests between now and the end of the year. And how those drop tests go and how they match the Mark II deployment of chutes, we can look at how similar they are or how different they are, and we can make assessments based on similarity that we can actually use a lot of the drop tests that we have on Mark II, and we have a lot of data on Mark II, a lot of testing on Mark II. We could use the data from Mark II to help qualify the Mark III, as long as we see consistent, repeatable performance that matches that of Mark II. So the question is, as we go through this process, what we will find is how consistent it is with the Mark II, and if it is consistent, it'll give us confidence that we don't have to do as many drop tests. If it is not consistent, then we will have to do more. And so we're going to learn that in the coming weeks and months, and that's one of the reasons why when we go forward, it is true, we believe hardware can be delivered by the end of the year, but we also have to make sure that before we put any people on any spacecraft, that we have the consistent, repeatable performance, and we have all of the data where we can make sure that we are meeting the margins that we agreed to ahead of time. So I would say, depending on how the next 10 drop tests go, we will know how many more drop tests we will need. Did you want to add to that, Elon?
Yeah, absolutely. So we expect to start the we've done a number of Mark III drop tests, but we're hopeful to have the first successful Mark III drop test within a week or two, and then there will be a steady cadence of tests thereafter. We certainly want to get I think at least something on the order of 10 successful tests in a row before launching astronauts. So that seems like where the behavior of the parachutes is consistent. across 10 successful tests. That's, I think, a good sort of figure of merit. Our best guess, and it's important to emphasize this as a guess, is that these tests we should get to something like 10 tests, before the end of the year. But we may not. This is just giving you what we believe.
To follow up, what is the difference between the Mark II and the Mark III, primarily?
Sure. The biggest difference between the Mach 2 and the Mach 3 is going to much stronger lines in the parachute. So going from essentially nylon to Xylon. There's actually a thing called Xylon, which is very impressive. The strength of the lines is about 3 times that of nylon, perhaps arguably more. And then there are some changes to the stitching pattern, so that because there are certain places where the load concentrates, basically it's fairly obvious where the lines connect to the canopy. You've got a stress concentration, and so you want to have just exactly the right joint to spread the load at the stress concentration where the lines meet the canopy.
It is also true when we talk about parachutes, and this is important. We have learned a lot because of the work of SpaceX and because of the work of Orion and Starliner. We have learned a lot recently about asymmetry issues on the risers of a parachute. That being said, we can apply that as an agency. NASA can take that data and that information that we get from our great partners, and we can apply it across the agency as a whole to make sure that our astronauts will be safe. And so this is an area where it's not either or, it's all of the above. And when one partner is successful, that success is applicable to all the partners, because human safety is the #1 priority for NASA and for SpaceX.
Yeah, and I've been very, very clear with Jim that any SpaceX data should not be considered proprietary, and it can be used by any of our competitors for no charge, for free, obviously.
And that will be very helpful.
Does anybody have another question for the astronauts who have to leave?
I have a question.
Can you hold on a second? Thank you. Your question for the astronauts?
Yes. Hi, CBS News. Thank you, gentlemen. What will you be doing between now and when you launch?
We'll be here. Short answer, but we spend almost all of every week here now. And obviously with the in-flight abort, there'll be some crew-related timeline exercises we want to do along the line of the in-flight abort timeline. So when we do the in-flight abort, we'll be down in Florida for that. We may get down for the static fire, but the majority of our time will be here training, running the sims with the teams, not only here in Hawthorne, but the team back in Houston. So a lot of time in California. And thank you, guys.
They have to catch a plane, so we'll say so long. Hey, thank you, guys.
Hi, Samantha Masunaga, LA Times. Oh, I'm over here. I'm
there
right
you
here.
are.
Yeah, just hiding in the back. I know you said that the program is close to human launches, but obviously it's also getting close to the end of U.S. availability of seats on Soyuz. Can you talk a little bit about that, Administrator? Is that a concern of yours at all?
It is. So clearly there's a number of things at play here. Number one is making sure that we get the hardware delivered. And I think we've got a good plan for how we're going to make that happen. And I want to also be clear, because I know a lot of the SpaceX workforce is going to see and hear this media. We are very grateful for their hard work, and we want